What's up, guys? Coming off a 2-2 night last night, or day or night, whatever. It actually wound up being a slight win with the way the moneyline underdogs worked out in the NHL, paying less of a price to try to win the same amount on those. Those NHL games maybe looked worse than they actually were. I mean, the Senators fell behind 3-0 in the first period. You just can't really come back from that. Well, they almost did, and they only lost by one. So they did make a game of it, and statistically, the game was not really very one-sided at all. I think it was pretty close, maybe with some of the stats going to Ottawa on that one, really. And then the other game, Calgary, I think they outstatted the Oilers in multiple different ways in that game. Played pretty well. I mean, that's kind of the situation that you want when you're playing a plus 145 underdog like that. You just need them to be in that game, and Calgary was certainly in that game. They tied the game back up. It was tied late in the game. They wound up losing by 2, but one of them was an empty netter. So really, it was kind of like a 1-goal loss in a close game right near the end there. Pretty brutal. The under in that baseball game got there, the Dodgers-Cubs, which I do like the under in that game again today, but I might find a little bit of a different way to play it this time. So we'll get to that. And I don't even remember what the other game. Oh, yeah, the Alabama team total under. Oh, my God. That was looking like a dead play, basically, after the first half, because Alabama did not suffer from weird sight lines in that cavernous stadium. They hit 8 3-pointers in the first half. They were 8 for 11 from 3, and I think at the same time, they're only like 6 for 18 from 2-point range. They were just hitting an unbelievable percentage from 3, 73% or whatever. You got to figure they can't sustain that, though, for an entire game, especially against a UConn defense that defends against the 3 pretty well. And Alabama did start going cold from beyond the arc in the second half, to the extent where it became like a really close play, and it actually looked good for the end of it pretty much, and it did get there. So hell yeah with that. I guess congratulations to both Purdue and UConn. They both won and covered. They will both be in the championship game tomorrow night, with UConn, I think, being about a 6.5-point favorite. The look ahead on that was a 5. I can talk about it more in my video tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to have a play on that one. That's a tricky situation where, you're not getting any value if you're laying the points with UConn there. But UConn looks unstoppable enough that it might still be the right side. I think it's hard to say. I'll probably not be playing the side in that one. Don't want to force a play on it just because it's the championship game. For today, I'm skipping the entire NHL card. I don't like the NHL card at all. Get this ring light going on here. I do not like the NHL card, so I'm skipping that. We'll go to the NBA. I am going to play 2 games in the NBA. NBA, you really got to look at motivation once it comes down to, you always have to look at motivation when it comes down to this stretch run like this. You got to be playing on teams with something to play for. That is going to be the case with this first game that I'm on, which is going to be to lay the points with the Orlando Magic. -7.5, I think, is the best you can do right now. It looks like it did open at 6.5 at some spots. I'm seeing them having 61% of the tickets in the market, but 73% of the cash. So it does look like there is money coming in on the Magic and driving them up, even though they might be a little bit public because they are the team with the better record here as well against the Chicago Bulls. But the Bulls, I don't know how much of a motivational spot this could possibly be for the Bulls. They are locked into one of the playing games. Basically, the East is pretty much shaped up, and now it's kind of a matter of a few teams left jockeying for seeding, and that is the Orlando Magic. The Bulls locked into a play-in game along with the Atlanta Hawks. They cannot move out of that spot. Brooklyn Nets eliminated yesterday, so it is guaranteed that the Bulls will be in one of the play-in spots. They have a big amount of padding of like 6 or 5.5 games between them and the 8th place Philadelphia 76ers, and also between them and the now eliminated Brooklyn Nets. So Bulls really don't have much to play for at this point, and they're coming off a pretty nice win over the New York Knicks as well. I don't know if that would be cause for a letdown spot, but I just don't think the Bulls are going to have an extreme amount of motivation here. I think Orlando is the team that has basically all the motivation in this game, even though, yeah, you're laying a price. You're laying points here. Orlando's sitting in the 4 spot again right now. They've been up and down between the 4 and the 5 pretty much. not too many games separate a lot of these teams, man. From Milwaukee all the way down to Indiana, from the 2 to the 6, they're all only separated by 3.5 games. If you throw Miami and Philadelphia in there, it's only a separation of 4.5 games. So Orlando, they're fighting for home court in the first round of the playoffs, man. And it means something, especially to Orlando, because Orlando has one of the more extreme home road dichotomies in basketball. 27-12 straight up at home and only 18-20 on the road. So Orlando, they are going to definitely be motivated to try to get that home court advantage there. And they're playing at home here. So we do have that home court advantage coming into play a little bit here, although it is factored into the line. But I do like playing on home teams that play much better at home. Orlando should be the one of the two teams that's more motivated in this one. Looks like the money is coming in on that side, in agreement with it. Orlando Magic will be the play there. And then the other play is going to be to play against the LA Lakers, who are on a back-to-back. I don't think they're in a particularly good spot here for the LA Lakers. Although I should also mention the Orlando Magic really quickly. I think they might even be slightly more motivated because they're actually coming off an embarrassing loss, too, to the Charlotte Hornets. They had won 3 straight games. They'd won a game against the Pelicans on the road, which is a pretty good win, and then maybe fell into a letdown type of spot or something like that and just didn't take the Hornets that seriously and dropped that game, which was a road game. So that might motivate Orlando as well because they're coming off an ugly loss. And yeah, they are returning home, but they're only returning home from that 2-game trip where they basically stayed in like the South, in the Southeast. So not really a huge trip. I don't really think it's going to be that much of an effect on the return home, especially when you have to be motivated in spots like this. But yes, playing against the LA Lakers. I think this is a spot to play against the Lakers here. The market does look like it's in agreement with that. It looks like it did open at 3 in some places, but I think the best you can get is 2 or 2.5 now on the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think there are still some 2.5s out there. Lakers have dropped to that. They have 76% of the tickets, but 56% of the cash. So Lakers being public here, I don't know if that's just kind of like the LeBron factor and the recreational bettors knowing that the T-Wolves are without Towns and maybe they're not, obviously they're not quite as good without him. Because otherwise you'd expect that maybe the public would be coming in on the T-Wolves getting points here because they have the better record. But the Lakers have all that name recognition in LeBron James, so that could be the reason why. They do seem to be the public team here with 76% of the tickets, but only 56% of the cash, according to this. And you can see that the line is moving against them. So I do think we're seeing what looks like reverse line movement to me against the LA Lakers in this one. So the market does appear to be signaling against the Lakers here. And some of it is probably because they're in a back-to-back. I think these teams played this same game basically back on March 10th, and the Lakers are like a 4.5-point favorite, unfortunately. So you're not really getting that much line value here, but I don't know if that also means the Lakers might be resting some guys because it has to be the fact that this is a back-to-back. So the line is taking that into account, but I'm going to do it anyway and grab the points with Minnesota. The Lakers, like I was about to say, they just clinched a playoff spot. They played yesterday against Cleveland, which was a return home from a long road trip, and they didn't suffer like a home distraction spot there. They did have 2 days off before that, but now they're on a back-to-back, and they are playing 4 games in 6 days and 5 games in 8 days, with all of those games being on the road except for the Cleveland game yesterday. And they do have Golden State up next, and they did lose at home to Golden State the last time they played them. So I don't know is that game going to even be a little bit more of a motivational spot than this one is because they beat Minnesota the last time they played them. I don't know, because Minnesota is still one of the top teams in the conference coming in, but I think Minnesota, they're going to have more reason to be focused in this one. They're coming off a pretty ugly loss to the Suns, which was one of my winners on the Phoenix Suns in that one. Could be a bounce back type of spot from Minnesota, not wanting to go 0-2 on this road trip for sure, but also Minnesota still jockeying for playoff seeding as well. They're still fighting for the 1 seed here. They're only a half game out behind the Denver Nuggets and only a game ahead of Oklahoma City. So they are still fighting for the 1 seed, whereas the LA Lakers, yes, the Lakers are fighting to try to maybe avoid the play-in, but that's kind of a tough ask, and they did just clinch a playoff spot. So Houston Rockets look like they're almost going to be out of it at this point. Golden State, I think, is the only team that mathematically could get knocked out by Houston still, but that's probably not going to happen. Houston, I think, has completely fallen off now. Once they lost that win streak, I think it's just over for Houston. Like I said, when that happened, I did mention that. Although I think I did lose one bet on Houston at some point after that, but what can you do? But yeah, the Lakers, I think it being a back-to-back and them having clinched a playoff spot yesterday, that's kind of it's a big deal, even though they do get into the playoffs fairly frequently, but still, you kind of, if it's kind of like you get that monkey off your back and you can kind of see teams let up just a little bit here. I am a little bit concerned that the Lakers do have this home road dichotomy where they're way better at home than on the road, one of the most extreme in the league. But Minnesota also has one of the best road records in the NBA as well. So did I say NHL or so? I don't even know. In the NBA. So I'm not that concerned about that. We're getting points with Minnesota. I think it's a better spot. It's a better rest spot for Minnesota. And getting points with Minnesota. Basically, you're getting points with a better defense in this one, too. So the market looks like it's in agreement with it. Minnesota T-Wolves plus 2.5, I guess, or whatever it is. Then we'll go to baseball. I should have started with baseball because all these I'm playing. Every game that I'm playing is in the 2 p.m. Eastern slate, which is kind of weird that you see these games. Are they really happening at 2 p.m.? Because I thought they all I thought these baseball games were all at 1 and 4, basically. No, I guess these are all in the 2 p.m. slates here. And I will mention like a couple of almost plays that I was going to make. I do like the under in the Mets-Reds game with a high-scoring game yesterday and with Manaea and Abbott both being pretty good pitchers and having good history against these opposing hitters. They both have pretty good numbers against these opposing hitters. So I do like the under in that game, but it's one that basically just got left off my card just a little bit. So there is that. I would lean to the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim against my Red Sox. The Red Sox just losing embarrassingly on an error on 2 unearned runs yesterday. Losing a game where you allow 0 earned runs, that's a great way to do it. But Tanner Houck against Chase Silseth, I think that's a mismatch, really. So I would only look to the Angels in that one. Silseth is the much better pitcher, has better strikeout stuff. Houck, I've seen what he can do, and it's not impressive. And then I do also lean to the under in the Cleveland Indians Minnesota Twins game with Tristan McKenzie and Bailey Ober. That one was almost going to make my card too. Both of those pitchers have good stuff, and they both have really good numbers against the opposing hitters there. So both of those starters, I think, are a good matchup against those hitters. But the problem I have with that one is that if you look at the bullpen usage yesterday, it's just awful. So, I mean, I would turn that one into a first 5-inning bet if I was going to play the under in that one, probably. I would consider doing it. That one would be close to being a play as well. And I guess you might even be able to say the same thing about the Blue Jays and the Yankees, just because that's a matchup between two pitchers who are kind of unknown to the opposing hitters, and Bowden Francis for Toronto and Luis Gil, or Luis Heel, I guess is how you probably pronounce it, on the New York Yankees there. Heel is a young guy who I think he looked pretty good in his first outing. And Francis, the problem I have with that one is that Francis is kind of a converted reliever. So even though he is kind of an unknown to the Yankees, that's the side of it I don't like as much. Like Heel, I would trust a little bit more in that one. So I can't quite get there with an under in that one. The actual plays that I'm going to be on, I'm playing on all like basically young guns. Basically, this is the day of the young pitchers, or the pitching newcomers here. So there's a familiar theme with the way that I bet baseball here. First one up is going to be to take the Chicago White Sox as a plus 110 underdog. Yeah, I know. I lost on the White Sox once not too long ago, and I have trashed Kansas City repeatedly. But the White Sox, I mean, I don't think either of these teams are good. Obviously, the White Sox are terrible, but this is a pitching matchup where I want to do it. I got to go in on the White Sox on this one. Kansas City, and I don't know where, but it looks like, according to pregame, it looks like the opener on this somewhere was minus 155. But I was seeing mostly like minus 130s out there. So I don't think the line's dropped as much as pregame makes it look, but they have dropped down to minus 124 with 74% of the tickets on them, but only 55% of the cash. So you have a public favorite Kansas City Royals. You don't see that often, but when they're playing against a horrific White Sox team, I guess that is the case. But the cash discrepancy looks like it is against Kansas City. It looks like there is more significant money coming in on the White Sox side, and that's what's causing this number to be driven down. And I think it has to do with the starting pitching matchup here for the Chicago White Sox. This is what I like, man. You got for Kansas City, Alec Marsh is pitching, and yeah, both of these pitchers are young guys, but Marsh, his stats don't impress me, man. I mean, he only has one season under his belt, so I don't know what you can really glean from that, but only about half of it was as a starter. But usually when you see a guy who pitched that significantly as a reliever, usually their stats actually look better. His don't look better, though. Like, his ERA last year, 5.69. That's awful. 1.56 whip. That's awful. His strikeout numbers are good. Yeah, he had a lot of strikeouts for the number of innings, 85 and 74 and a third. But tons of walks, 39 walks. This guy's wild, man. He did have a good start to start this season. Yes, I will give him that. And it was against a good Baltimore offense, too. And he was efficient. He really didn't throw that many pitches. So that does scare me a little bit as far as the Royals side here. But I think that I'm going to weigh last year's season over what I see from one start here. And it's even possible that maybe he regresses a little bit after such a good start. The White Sox have seen him before, so he's not totally unknown, although only 4 of their hitters have seen him before, but they're 2 for 7 off of him, 286. That's not too bad, so he's not completely unknown to them, really. Whereas on the other side, this is what I like better, man. You got Garrett Crochet, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Garrett Crochet for the White Sox. I mean, he also had an excellent start in his first. Actually, he has 2 starts, I guess, this year already, and he's been excellent with 16 strikeouts in 13 innings pitched, only 1 walk, only 8 hits and 2 earned runs allowed him. One of the runs was on a solo home run, which was the only run he allowed against the Atlanta Braves. So that one game was against a good offense as well in the Atlanta Braves, and he was able to hold them down. I think this guy might be the real deal, man. And he's a lefty, so he comes out at you with some weird arm angles. And Kansas City has seen him before, but they're only 1 for 4 off of him, 250. So I prefer Crochet in this one. Although looking at him, yeah, I mean, he also is a guy who was not a starter until this year, but I think he's a much more like highly touted prospect. He's a guy that has better stuff than Marsh does. So I like Crochet in this one. And it does look like the market is signaling in agreement with me on this one. Crochet, yeah, I mean, his whip was terrible last year because he was wild as hell. 13 walks in 12 and 2/3. That's not good, but it looks like he's got that under control, man, so far this year. His first 2 starts, he's been feeling it, I would have to say. So I'm going to jump on the Crochet side in this one and not on the side of Alec Marsh, who I think is a little bit more of a known quantity. And after that full season, well, not really a full season, but a season where he had 8 starts, you can kind of glean something from that and kind of gauge that I think he is the worst of these 2 pitchers and is the pitcher that's at more of a disadvantage here. Royals also shut the White Sox out yesterday. I mean, the Royals are on the verge of a sweep. So this is another type of angle that I like, which kind of puts us over the top in baseball, where you have a team in the White Sox trying to avoid a sweep. And they've been awful in the series. They've scored 2 runs in 3 games in the series, losing the first 3 games by a combined 15-2 score. So the White Sox haven't scored a lot either, except for the first game. But this has been kind of an embarrassing series. And Kansas City, yeah, I mean, they have Houston up next, so that's a big series. So it is possible that they overlook Chicago in the finale. I mean, you just beat this team 3 times in a row. You shut them out yesterday. You have a big series against Houston coming up. It is possible they overlook it, where the White Sox in that sweep avoiding role here, that tends to be a little bit of an extra motivator there to try to avoid that sweep. So I like that angle of it, too, for the White Sox coming into this one. And yeah, the White Sox coming off a shutout, which is pretty embarrassing. Whenever you get shut out, that's going to be embarrassing. Neither of these teams really taxed their bullpen very much. The Royals did use their closer yesterday, I believe, and one of their better setup men. But it was a close game, so both teams kind of used a couple of their good relievers. But White Sox only used 3 relievers, and Kansas City only used 2, so they didn't really tax their pens here. So I think a full game play on this is fine to do in this situation. That'll be the Chicago White Sox. Next up, I will be on the Seattle Mariners, plus 105. I like the Seattle Mariners in this one as well. I think we are seeing some things in the market that agree and some things that don't, I guess, where you see the Milwaukee dropping from minus 125 to minus 114 on the money line here, and they're public with 83% of the tickets, it looks like. But according to pregame, they also have 96% of the cash. I'm not quite sure that that's totally accurate. If you see the line moving against Milwaukee, I don't think they could possibly have the significant amount of the cash on them like that. So sometimes these numbers that I see on pregame, I just like the way that their screen is outlined here as far as reading the market here. It helps me read the market visually more than basically any other site that I've found, besides maybe the Dawn Best odds screen, which costs a pretty penny. But I don't know. For some reason, I like the visuals of pregame here. But I do think that Seattle is the right side in this one. Looking at the starting pitching matchup in this one, I think it's going to be the way to go in this one because you have Colin Ray is pitching for the Milwaukee Brewers. He's been seen before, although it's a small sample size against Seattle. But Seattle's hitters are 4 for 13 off of him for 308 batting average. So, yeah, it is a limited sample size, but they have been able to hit him. And I think he is the significantly worse pitcher in this matchup. He's kind of a journeyman. I mean, there's a reason why he hasn't stuck with a team and he's kind of bounced around because his numbers just haven't really been that good. Although last year probably was his best season. It was really he's only had really 2 full seasons as a starter with San Diego in 2016. That was not a good season. And then his season with Milwaukee last year was probably his best, with a 1.19 whip. That's not bad. His stats were decent. Strikeout numbers were pretty decent. 110 and 124 and 2/3 innings. Decent, but he doesn't have great, overpowering stuff. He's an okay pitcher, I think, at best. And he's kind of been in and out of rotations, on a bunch of different teams, in and out of bullpens and stuff. And he has been in the league since 2015. He's only had really 1 full season last year and an almost full season in 2016. And other than that, really hasn't pitched much at all. He had a couple of years where he only played he didn't play at all between 2016 and 2020, and then over 2020 and 2021, he barely played. So he almost had a gap of 7 years where he barely played at all. So I don't really like that, man. I mean, I think that just indicates that he's just not the way you want to look here. And I think we get an advantage in the starting pitching matchup looking at a guy who's pitching for Seattle who is unknown. So that's an advantage. He's completely unknown to the Milwaukee Brewers. So I like that aspect of it. Of course, I like taking pitchers who have never been seen before by the opposing hitters. If the pitcher is a top prospect, which is the case here, it's Emerson Hancock is the pitcher for Seattle. He was a top prospect. He was the 6th overall draft pick in, I believe, 2020. A high pick, first round pick. And then I think he had some injuries to deal with and stuff. So that's a little bit of a concern. But the fact that he was that high of a draft pick, that tells you that he does have good stuff. These teams like his stuff, and I've looked into it. He does have a pretty strong fastball. He does have stuff where he is going to be able to throw against these major league hitters here, even if it hasn't quite shown up yet in a very limited amount of time playing in the majors so far. But I like playing on Hancock here a lot better than playing on this journeyman Colin Ray over there. I forget what else. Oh yeah, but when a starting pitcher has not been seen by the opposing hitters before, that tends to be an advantage the first time through the lineup for the pitcher as well, because these hitters, you can't really replicate seeing a specific pitcher in a real life game scenario until you're actually there and you're doing it, because every pitcher is so unique. You don't really know how you're going to be able to adjust to hit this specific guy yet. So the pitcher does tend to have an advantage for that reason. And because Hancock is a guy with a good fastball, does have good strikeout potential, and was a high draft pick like this, I like the Hancock side a lot more. And I like the fact that his ERA looks bad at 5.06 this year, but there's not much you can take away from one start. And it wasn't a horrific start. It was 5 1/3. He gave up 3 runs. He did not have enough strikeouts, though, so that concerns me a little bit. The fact that he only had 1 strikeout in that game against Cleveland. His team did win the game against Cleveland. He had an okay start, but maybe we could chalk that up to just him being a little bit nervous getting back into it. It was only his 4th career start. He had 3 career starts last year, and his strikeout numbers weren't as good as you want to see. Very limited sample size, so tough to really gauge like how good he's actually going to be. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's not enough of a sample size yet to really gauge this, but I think overall, if like a recreational bettor comes in, they're going to look at his stats and they're probably going to not like what they see out of his stats. They don't look very good. His ERA doesn't look very good. Whereas they're going to see, oh, Colin Ray has a 1.8 whip. Like, he's the way to go. Or 1.8 ERA. See, 1.8 whip would be terrible. His whip is 1.4, which is not good, but that's only in one start. So, obviously not a huge sample size, but they might see, oh, he has a 1.8 ERA this season, man. Yeah, but it's only in one start. So Ray has to be the better pitcher, right? Because his ERA one start into the season looks way better. I think that's going to be misleading as well. And I think the public might just kind of like Milwaukee better just because they are Milwaukee. They have the better record. Seattle's below 500. Milwaukee was in the playoffs last year. So I think the public is going to want to come in and play Milwaukee here if they're playing this game. So all of that leads up to me wanting to play on the Seattle Mariners in this one. And then the bullpen situation, yeah, I mean, you could say it's a slight disadvantage maybe for the Mariners, but the Mariners only had Thornton throw 3 pitches yesterday. So a couple of the guys they used yesterday, they used a couple of their best relievers, but a couple of the guys threw so few pitches that it is possible they're not even unavailable today, especially Thornton after only throwing 3 pitches. But you could say the same thing about the Brewers, having a couple of guys having only thrown 8 and 5 pitches. So it's tough to gauge the bullpen situation here. So it is possible you'd want to turn this one into a first 5-inning bet. I'm still going full game on this one, but either way, I think I like it. But yeah, both teams did use a few of like the back end of their bullpen, but I think the bullpen situation is not like a huge advantage or disadvantage one way or the other. So I'm just leaving it as a full game play on this one. Then I will be on somebody please stop me from doing this and playing the Miami Marlins at plus 120. This is awful, man. Marlins 0-9. I've lost 2 bets on them this year. One of them was on the same pitcher, and there's a reason why I'm going back to the well and betting him again, man. Max Meyer. I'll talk about him in a second, but I think if you're going to play on Miami in any spot, it's got to be a spot like this where it looks like they do have the advantage in the starting pitching matchup. Although I said that last time and I still didn't win the game between Miami and Pittsburgh, but we'll see what happens with this one. The market looks like it has some indicators going against St. Louis, with the line being driven down from what looks like an opener of minus 160 all the way down to minus 134 now, with 73% of the tickets on them. But it looks like 84% of the cash on St. Louis. Not sure if that's quite accurate if we see the line moving way down. But of course, that cash percentage also isn't at a specific number. So it's just overall. So when the number is moved like this, does that mean that there are some guys just coming back and buying St. Louis at the cheaper price? I don't know, but it looks like the more significant money has moved this line down and towards Miami. And I think I agree with it. I like the starting pitching matchup in this one, man. Unfortunately, the public is not going to want to have anything to do with Miami as an 0-9 team, but at some point something has to give, man. But Miami has Max Meyer pitching. He pitched well in his first start this year, and they just didn't win. He did fine. 4 strikeouts in 5 innings, 2 walks. You want to see that walk number go down a little bit, but he did not have that bad of an out. He only gave up 2 hits, although he gave up 2 earned runs because he did a lot of home run, but not a bad start for him. Or that wasn't against Pittsburgh, actually. That was against L.A. Sorry, the L.A. Angels of Anaheim. I thought that was the Pittsburgh series. It was not. But Meyer, I mean, he's another one of these guys who's like a top prospect, man, in a team's organization. He was like a high draft pick as well. He's the guy that does have good strikeout potential. He did make 2 starts last year, and not much you could take away from that. He did have 6 strikeouts in 6 innings, but again, he walked too many guys. His whip was way too high at 1.5, so he's got to get those numbers down. But I like his potential. I think he has a high ceiling. He does have good strikeout stuff. So I do like all of that about Max Meyer. And then to put it over the top, St. Louis has never faced him before. They don't have any hitters in their on their team who have ever seen him before. So I think that's an advantage early on to Max Meyer, whereas he's up against Kyle Gibson, who I've talked about how I don't think Gibson is any good. His stats this year do look good, but it's only through 1 start where he gave up 2 runs in a 7-inning performance, a good performance against San Diego. But that's only 1 start, man. But the public might come in and only want St. Louis here. Oh, Kyle Gibson, he was on that good Orioles team last year. He's got a 2.57 ERA this year. He's going to be the way that we're going to go here, right? Yeah, I would say not so fast because his career, he's never really been good except for that weird outlier 2021, like half season or more than half season with Texas. Other than that, his stats have really been consistent and not very good. I don't know what that outlier was with Texas in 2021, but other than that, his ERA has been in the high fours, basically in a whip close to the mid ones. That's not good, man. He's just not a very good pitcher, and he's in his mid 30s now. I guess I probably should have also mentioned that one of the other pitchers that I just mentioned I was going up against is in their 30s as well, which I think was Colin Ray. So going against some of these older guys, Gibson is really on the back end of his career, though, a 36-year-old now. So I'm going to take the young gun here in Max Meyer over Kyle Gibson, who I would trust Meyer a lot more. Gibson has been seen a lot by Miami's hitters, although granted, a couple of these guys are hurt for Miami. That is true, but still, Miami's the hitters they have on their current roster are 32 for 114 off of Kyle Gibson. So they've seen him a lot. They have a lot of history against him. That's a large sample size, and it's a 281 batting average, so not bad. So they've been able to hit him pretty decently. So I think the advantage does go to Max Meyer in the starting pitching matchup there, and then looking at the bullpen situation. Looking at yesterday's game here where St. Louis won 3-1. St. Louis used more relievers than the Marlins did. The Marlins only used 3 relievers. And their bullpen's not very good, but their bullpen's not in horrendous shape after that game yesterday. They only used 3 relievers. St. Louis to notch the win, a 3-1 win. They had to use like the entire back end of their bullpen, getting holds and saves. They're using their closer there, Helsley. So they used like most of their best relievers yesterday. My Boston accent keeps coming through, man. The relievers. After Matz only went 5 innings yesterday. Rogers for the Marlins also went 5 innings yesterday. But St. Louis, I think their bullpen is in a slightly worse position after yesterday's game because they had to use their best relievers to hang on to the victory there. And then you, of course, have the fact that Miami is in a sweep avoiding role here. They're in that spot where they're trying to avoid the sweep. So that is a little bit of the extra motivator there as well. And St. Louis does have Philadelphia up next. So is that going to be a slight look ahead because Philadelphia is a better team and a team that, of course, was in the playoffs last year. So is it possible they might be looking ahead a little bit to that game? Potentially, maybe. So, that's the situation there. So I will take the Miami Marlins. And then in the final, play that I mentioned the Dodgers-Cubs game. This one, I am actually going to be on the under, but I'm only going to make it a first 5-inning under in this one because I like the starting pitching matchup for an under, and I don't like the bullpen scenario. If you look at the bullpens yesterday, so I won on the under full game in the same game yesterday. And for all those reasons, I do like the under again here for similar reasons to yesterday, where it's a game where, again, the public sees Dodgers, Cubs. They don't really know who these starters are necessarily. They're going to want to come in and say, oh, these teams, I got to take the over here, right? With these teams that have really good like offensive weapons in these lineups and stuff. So I think that's going to be the public sentiment again. They have 82% of the tickets on the over on this one, but only 51% of the cash on the over. So it does look like it's a public over scenario with a lot less of the cash coming in on the over. And I don't see where the line has moved. It's been like around 8.5. It looks like for pretty much the entire time that the line has been out. So I don't really see that it's moved much, but I don't know. But then yesterday, this is like cold weather in Chicago in April, man. So that's also not really conducive to the ball like flying out of the park as much either. So those cold weather early season games in some of these colder cities, I don't know exactly what the temperature is going to be in this game, but that also tends to keep the run scoring down a bit. So I like that aspect of it as well. And yesterday, the wind was actually blowing in the game yesterday, which is one thing that I wasn't even aware of, but that also I think will help. It's going to be 57 degrees, so not that cold, but certainly not hot or even warm, really. So I think that also helps. I didn't even know about the wind aspect of it yesterday, but that just helped it. It was a nice, easy cash on the under there, although it looked a little bit questionable at the end when the Cubs put the first two guys on base in the ninth inning, but still, we still got out of there with a pretty easy win on that one on the under. This one is going to be first 5 inning though, because in that game yesterday, these teams really, really taxed their bullpens yesterday, man. So I can't do it for the full game. Like, I just don't know what these teams are going to be able to do with their bullpens here. So that really concerns me. So I'm going to turn it around and just rely on the starting pitching matchup here. Both these bullpens, they used some of their best relievers. The Dodgers used 4 relievers. The Cubs also used 4 relievers. Both pitchers didn't make it that. The starters didn't really make it that deep into the game, although they both pitched pretty well. Wicks threw a lot of pitches in very few innings, really. And then Yamamoto, they seem to be kind of still limiting his pitch count a little bit. So took him out in a pretty good start for him, maybe earlier than they would. Like once he gets his bearings behind him, they might be leaving him in longer in these games. But so I'll take the bullpens out of the equation just because, excuse me, I don't love it, although maybe it won't even be necessary. I don't know. Or maybe we'll just lose this one horrifically. Who knows? But this is a starting pitching matchup again where I think the pitchers have the edge in this one with Gavin Stone pitching for the LA Dodgers. Young guy, and he's never been seen before by the Chicago Cubs, so that's an advantage to the pitcher when it's a guy who's never been seen before by the opposing hitters. Stone, he only has 4 starts in his major league career so far. He's a young guy who has decent stuff, but again, it just hasn't really shown yet. Like, his stats last year were bad, which another thing, like the recreational bettors are going to see that his numbers really don't look good, and they're going to think, oh, well, that obviously we're going to take the over here. This guy Stone sucks, right? I'm not so sure about that. I think his problem again was like wildness. Like, his walks weren't good at all last year. 13 walks, that was bad. And he did only have 22 strikeouts in 31 innings. So you'd like to see those strikeout numbers go up a bit more, but the wildness was really the problem last year. And maybe he's going to be getting that down a little bit because his first start this year was good. He won. I don't know if he got the win in the game, but they won the game. He went 5 innings. He gave up maybe too many hits with 7, but only 3 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, and 1 walk. So he was able to keep the opposing hitters fairly in check. So I do like that aspect of it. I like that he's unseen by the Cubs. And then on the other side, you got the Cubs with Shota Imanaga, who is a guy that I believe one of these guys that they brought over from the Japanese leagues. And he's a guy who the Dodgers have never seen before. So again, it's going to be like unfamiliar to the opposing hitters. And he has one really good start so far this year. That might be the only start in his major league career so far, too. The one start that he had this year, but it was against a bad Rockies team. But yeah, still, he went 6 innings and only gave up 2 hits, 9 strikeouts, no walks, no runs. Very, very clean, very, very good performance there. And they let him throw 92 pitches, too. So I like that. So I do like a lot. There's a lot to like about this starting pitching match with both pitchers having not been seen before. They're both very unfamiliar to these hitters. So I like it. I'm going to go first 5 inning on it to take the bullpens out of the equation, which means going under 4.5. Hopefully it's not too dangerous there. Under 4.5 for the first 5 inning in that one, which you're probably for that one to hit an over. Just like with all these overs, you kind of need both teams to be able to score to put that thing over, and I don't know that that's going to be the case here. I think at least one of these lineups is probably going to struggle against the opposition, against the opposing pitcher they haven't seen before. So that's the card for today, man. Hopefully we continue the winning, even though I've been kind of chugging along and getting mostly just like small wins, and I'm really trying to get back to where I was beginning of the year. I'm down like, I think, 3,000 from the beginning of the year at this point, which is not good this far into the year. I haven't experienced much like this ever, so we got to get this back up. And after the beginning of the year, I also shot up like 3,000 more in the middle of January really quickly, and then I had a steep drop off, and since then I've just been treading water for like over a month now. So something's got to give here, man. We got to get back to it. That's gonna do it. I'm Toad. Enjoy the games today. Peace.